Hi, and welcome to the Together podcast. We are your hosts, Mike, Elliott, and Courtney Wren, and this is this juicy terrain where we dive into conscious partnership, conscious parenting, and we love to bring the realness of our relationship to the table, and we equally enjoy bringing the realness of other couples to the stage. And today is one of those days where we get to interview Taylor and Scott. And Courtney, why don't you start off by introducing where you met Taylor?
Yeah, I met Taylor. Both of us were speakers at the Awakening Her Summit that Deidre Sirianni put on in June, and it's something that she's going to be evolving and growing, and it was such a blessing. And so I actually landed in Vancouver at this apartment where I was staying, and that's where I met Taylor. And I've been laughing that I think I spent at least an hour and a half standing in the boot room with my boots on because we got talking so deeply so fast. And instant soul connection. And then we roomed together for the weekend, and I got to hear her speak and just get to know her magic. And one of the things that we were really feeling, what I was really feeling when I was hanging out with her, is wow, there's a lot of resonance in our journey, because we're both, these women that are journeying with supporting people in relationship and embodying themselves more, the somatics, but also we're both in conscious partnership with partners who are also entrepreneurs and also supporting people in the evolution of consciousness. So we were just jamming in all the things, like, what do you notice in this? And all the I'm like, we gotta record this. And so we're really excited to dive into this topic, because for us, the people that we work with are leaders. They're people that are already showing up in their mission. And so then, of course, it's like, okay, you're showing up in your mission, you know who you want to be in the world, what you want to be doing. And now you're merging that with relationship. And there's a whole unique quality of challenge and growth and juice that then we start to dance with in that place. And so that's what we're excited to dive into with both of you. And maybe you could just introduce a little bit about yourselves, and what does your entrepreneur life look like? Like, what are you both doing in the world, and a little bit about your relationship too.
I want to hear that. And I just want to name just one little tidbit too of my own experience of you both already, is how refreshing it is that you bring your vulnerable truth to the table, where you're human, where the challenge of being in relationship and entrepreneurs at the same time, we know that one well, is it's beautiful and amazing when it is, and it can be uncomfortable and sticky and tender and vulnerable when it's not. And I feel that from both of you already, from our live and today's landing.
Yeah.
And it's like where we get to be human, and this is what our listeners really appreciate, is the vulnerability. So really welcoming all of you to the table, and just excited to hear Courtney's inquiry there.
Wow. I'm so grateful and so excited to be here with both of you and for the conversation that we're about to have and see what doors and pathways that we open up together. And I think first and foremost, leading with vulnerability, is we both had our own individual entrepreneurship journeys prior to us meeting. And since coming into union together, and since dropping into love and relationship, those purposes and the ways that our businesses looked have significantly changed and evolved in ways that I did not expect. And for me, I'm a women's coach, and I work with women as a holistic life coach, a somatic embodiment mentor, breathwork facilitator, work with sensuality and like the whole spectrum of woman. And I started as working with women in business, and I coached a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs and leaders and women who were in their purpose. And then when I started seeing Scott, suddenly I started attracting women who were in their purpose, but were really craving partnership and craving provision from a man and craving to really soften into their feminine, rather than being in the I can do it all myself, boss babe, work hard, get to the goal, achieve everything on my own mentality. And instead, this side of a woman that I think in society had a lot of shame and suppression and maybe not a true honesty around what she desired. And so it's been evolving so much, even within my own personal journey of allowing myself to step out of the role of doing everything on my own, of actually allowing myself to be provided for, of actually like letting myself open into a man and seeing how that shapeshifts my business and my work and my purpose.
Mm. Hmm.
And for me, I have been on the journey of masculine development for a long time and all of its various flavors of what that is, from the David Goggins Hustle Harder. I was, prior to my awakening, a tech entrepreneur. I built one of the largest event staffing apps in the world and grew it to hundreds of thousands of users. My app was used to staff the Super Bowl the year that the Kansas City Chiefs won, which is, I'm from Kansas City. So it was like, it was this really beautiful tech journey that took me over the course of 8 years. I raised millions in funding, and then COVID happened. Events went to nothing. In the course of 1 week, I went from 16,000 active events on my platform to zero, and had to let go all of my employees, stepped away from the business, and went on a journey of finding myself. And that journey led me to really deep men's work. And I went all in on it. And through that path, I ended up taking everything I learned from my entrepreneurial journey of building a successful tech company, taking all of this men's work, and now I do executive men's coaching. And it's really beautiful because you work with women, I work with men, and we are in the field of working with each other all the time. And that's a topic that I imagine you two relate to strongly, being both out in the world doing the work and in the work together. And I'm excited to explore that with you and the listener, because I imagine we have a lot of we're in the soup of coaching like 24/7.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, feeling in what you're sharing there, and it's interesting because this came up last night. We were talking about this, right? Where, um, you know, in that way, the relationship itself, like what we move through in relationship, ends up feeding and lifting and supporting our work with our clients. So we'll watch the mirror of like, we shift, something shifts here, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, Mike comes in, he's like, something's shifting in our family field in a big way. Like, this is what's happening in my sessions with people, and then vice versa too, where the work that we're doing and the juice that we're mining and that we're like getting to ends up deeply watering our relationship.
Yeah. And where in your experience, you'll be working with one person and then it attracts the other partner. Where there's this dance of, I think you named it. And I think this is where we're at collectively, is that, there's been this generation of online business entrepreneurs, this individual, the David Goggins version of grind and push. And I'd say collectively, what is attractive, like you named it, attracting people who are curious about the relationship piece. So they still want to be learning about business and what are the qualities that I need to embody to do that and tend my business. Like our version is we'll attract people to actually work with their relationships. But what I'm hearing in your share there is you'll attract, for you, Taylor, women who are curious about that relational space, more of that inner journey in business, not just business. Attracting a partner is what you shared there. And then for you, Scott, like, bringing in these different qualities and how the relationship gets to then spill out into the business.
Yeah, it's really beautiful in that share. There's so much synergy between business and relationship. Like they so beautifully feed each other. And I know for me, my journey of relationship, even before I met Scott, was the primary backbone of so much of the healing journey that I did within myself that would always inspire my creative expression in my business and offers that I would do and like things that I would create for the world came from love, came from heartbreak, came from healing, came from meeting someone and seeing myself through the lens of the relationship. And the way that we've deepened in relationship has always been like purpose and mission, and also family values, and creating something of legacy and sustainability that isn't just us work, 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 work all the time to get to this goal and get to this outcome and get to this like out there thing, but instead, how can we weave business and relationship together so that we get to have it all and not sacrifice one in favor of the other?
Yeah.
And there's this added tightrope that I imagine all entrepreneurs who are in relationship walk, which is when the relationship's struggling, the business is often struggling.
Yeah.
When the business starts to struggle, it causes struggles in the relationship. And if you end the relationship, how do you keep the business together?
Mm.
And sometimes there's this struggle of like, the business adds so much pressure to the relationship, and we're fortunate in that we have our own separate businesses, but still, because we're solo entrepreneurs, when her business is having its challenges,
They
it's
feed into the
very relevant.
relationship, yeah.
And so I'm curious to hear of your two experience with that and how your relationship has affected your business and vice versa.
Well, and we're in the interesting, just to orient all the listeners, because, you know, some of you might know our journey well and some might not, is we're in the journey of actually merging our business even more and really birthing the Together brand. Because for a while, you know, I've had my business for, I've been actually, officially in business for 9 years. Yeah, entrepreneurial. And then in the profession that I'm in for 17 years. And then when I met Mike, it was so obvious that we were meant to journey together in that way. Like it was, you know, that was part of the, whoa, we're on the same path, that we're both so inspired by this. We both want to show up for a relationship. And then
We were in very different places.
do you want to talk about where you were at? Yeah.
When we first met, you know, for 13 years, I had been in the individual path, personal development, and I struggled relationally. Like I was previously married, that marriage ended. I took all of that learning, initiated huge growth, and then really found the clarity of who I was, the mission I wanted to bring out into the world, somewhat clear in what it was. Like I could feel it, and moving towards that direction. So when we met, I was in the newness. I was in the vulnerability of still being in the matrix. I worked at like the traditional 9 to 5 job for a government. And when I met her, it was the biggest initiation of my life, because I could feel spirit being like, okay, and here's the mirror of where you're avoiding taking the leap, where you're attached to certainty and safety. Your choice, man. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay in the matrix and just keep doing this loop, or are you going to choose love? Because when I met Courtney, it wasn't immediate, but very soon after, there was this clarity of like, holy shit, this is the person that I have been journaling about. She hits all the check boxes. I'm very practical, so I had check boxes. And I was like, holy shit, she checks them all. Oh God. But in order to be with her, that means letting go of this thing and being seen in that journey. Because I could feel, if I let go of the certainty, if I let go of the matrix, holy shit, it is, you know, in my gene keys, my radiance shadows struggle. And it's a vulnerable.
Yeah, I was telling you because I remembered your gene keys.
And it's vulnerable to be seen, because that's going to be my forever journey, where it's struggle, huge breakthrough, struggle, huge breakthrough. And so I could feel this part of me like, oh God, I'm going to be seen in this. So I took the leap, and I was in it. I was in the struggle, and I allowed it time and time again to initiate me. And that's the piece that I'd say was the scariest, but also the most fulfilling. Now that I understand that's the process in our relationship, when we came together, if I didn't have this tension of pleasure and attraction and desire, and also, oh God, you're really putting up a mirror for me to see the parts of myself I still need to grow and develop, like the vulnerability of that. That's the juice that's allowed me to step into my mission more than I could have ever done on my own. And like but holy shit, in the beginning, it was vulnerable because Courtney had been in her business. She had already done all those leaps. She'd figure it out, all the business pieces and having team members and, you know, and I was sitting there like, oh God, and now I'm feel completely emasculated. I've just left my 9 to 5. I have no job yet. And I have to start a business now and figure out all these things.
And we're having a baby.
Oh, and
wow. We're going to consciously have a baby in there too. And looking back, I wouldn't change it for anything because I'd say, you know, the meat and the juice of what I feel like we're exploring is partnership and entrepreneurship mirror each other in lots of ways, where it's this choosing to step into the crucible and be in the heat of the tension and the life and the material that comes up and face it, love it, own it, be seen in it, take responsibility for it, want to be, inspired to grow in it. And now, thank God, a few years later, now I'd say I'm more settled in the place of, I feel like we've got equal, you know, feet on the field.
Yeah.
We both have our positions. I feel very confident in my entrepreneurial path. And now what that's done is the more we've journeyed that path, the more it's just organically arrived to a podcast which we had for a couple of years now. And then that led into supporting couples. And that's the juice of our work now is, you know, this weekend going to an event where we are speaking together on sacred relationships. So now it's the entrepreneurial world and the relational world, like really intimately together.
Well, and if I can add one little piece to that, because part of my journey then, and I would love to dive into this a bit, Taylor, and hear from you, but is for me in the journey was having a baby. And then, you know, I have my entrepreneurial path. This is my sovereign path, and really wanting to keep creating. And then what I was finding energetically in the energetics of that is him having a business and me having a business, and then being a mom and wanting to have another baby. And I don't think this would be true for everybody, but this is what the path has been for us. Is there was an inner Courtney that was like, I will not settle into the masculine that much, you know, like I am, but I'm like resisting. This is like, I was so many layers of that. And it's been literally life just like slowly just like eroding me down, like, and showing me that actually the right alignment for our family, the right alignment for me to show up as the mom I want to be, for me to show up as a partner I want to be, for me to show up as just the person I want to be in the world, is to let go of all of that, to let myself lean in to Mike more. And I've had to go through so many initiations of like, no. And then every time I surrender, it gets so much easier. It gets so much. And I just feel life is saying, you know, lean into Mike, let him carry those pieces of business so that you can show up like in the area that you are meant to show up in, and then be present as a mama, be present in your feminine, be more in that. And it's still a journey. I keep going through layers of like, and
relate.
yeah, I'd love to hear about that. Just one last little thing about that you already touched on, because I love you to talk about it, is I think it's important to name there's so much culturally for us as feminine around not doing that, around not, and that if we do that, it means somehow we are being weak, or we're, you know,
And just one added layer to that, where we're coming from the Industrial Revolution, is it's been proven with lots of evidence, visually seeing the dynamic where the masculine is leading, shut down, and emotionally abusive, withdrawn, disconnected, controlling. And so, of course, feminine are resistant to it. And there's a vulnerability there. And there's also a wisdom. And I'd say the piece that I feel from you, Scott, that's different is you have found men's work, you're on your own journey, you're taking responsibility from where I'm sitting, taking responsibility for your life, which does create new ingredients for the feminine to surrender into and get to know that resistance. I'm just curious what comes up for you there, Taylor.
Yeah, it has been initiation after initiation after initiation from the moment that I met him. And I'm coming out of this kind of like, I didn't ever have the blueprint or example of what it looks like to be in healthy relationship. My parents divorced at 13, and my mom was like stressed, working hard to provide. And it was a very unexpected, traumatic moment of the split between mom and dad. And for me, so much of my work has been really unraveling that like lack of safety and trust in the masculine, and this like deep fear that I will be betrayed and abandoned, and like just suddenly my whole stability is ripped out from underneath me. And that pattern for me manifested throughout all of my relationships until I started the conscious relationship journey. And my conscious relationship journey started very much with just myself in relation to other. And I went through the path of like really wanting to learn through relationship. And I imagine it's my Libra rising and like all of my gene keys and like all of these parts of me that like learned so much about myself through the lens of relationship. And I had a lot of really toxic, traumatic relationships that I walked through. And it further perpetuated this mistrust in the masculine, and further perpetuated this like feeling, this lack of safety and lack of trust in men. But I would always look within and see, how am I creating this? How have I attracted this into my life? What am I learning through this experience? And because there was this yearning desire to surrender, I think, as a woman and like as the feminine, this like deep desire to not have to be the one to work and not have to be the one to provide and not have to do these things in order to survive. But on a physiological level, feeling this like lack of safety to really truly surrender, I would attract men who would say that they wanted to do that, but then shift. And there would be a lot of shame and judgment and like 50-50 relationships where my partner was trying to like, get me to make as much money as him when I'm like not making as much, or dynamics where I would be the one providing for the man that I was with. And it was just a lot of like there was a lot of a mess within it. And because of that, I went on the journey of, I'm going to make my own money. I'm going to have my own business. I'm going to be responsible for my own survival and success. And I created a successful business doing that, traveling the world, time freedom, all of these things. Like I was making six figures with ease. And then I met Scott. And then the first month of our relationship was, I have no capacity to be in my business because I'm in this love bubble. I have no energetic availability for anyone but him and me. And as we're learning each other and we're like finding intimacy with each other, I basically went on like a 2-month hiatus from my business that I had no plan for. It was like I just could not do it. And I had a lot of fear around that because I'm like, well, what if this relationship doesn't work out? What happens if I pour all of this love and all of this energy into this man and then he leaves me? And I, again and again, have gotten to, through him, really allow myself to soften into my feminine because he is showing up as that masculine. I want to provide for you. I want to protect. I want to help you heal in this process. And I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not leaving. And every single little part of me that was like traumatized through relationship and like didn't trust the masculine has gotten to like brat out and freak out and express and like show my fullness. And for him to be like, I'm not going anywhere, has been so healing for me. And even in the initiation that I feel like I'm in now is moving out of like the boss babe, right? Like when we did the family constellations at the event, like the boss babe, and not in the martyr of like, let me be everything for everyone. Let me like try to do all of the things, and really into that matriarch role, like that role of like, I get to be in my purpose, but it's not me being in my purpose and business out of stress and survival and scarcity and like I have to do these things, but more so from this perspective of like, if I didn't have to work, what would I do? If I didn't have to meet my needs, what would I do? And that's been such an identity shift of like, what is my mission actually as a woman? Like, what is my mission? And I know being a mother, like, that is a path that we're going to walk down one of these days, is like, as soon as we bring a new soul into the world, like, that's going to initiate us again. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this journey of like conscious relationship and conscious entrepreneurship is it gets to look like whatever you want it to look like. And it's going to be different for every single couple, every single person. Is like what it looks like for me might be different than what it looks like for you. And that's beautiful. But like where we came from, it was like, the man that did provide was abusive and violent. And like the woman was so repressed and so depressed and so disconnected from herself. And I actually unconsciously fell into dynamics of that in past relationships. And there's like this terror of like, oh, if I allow a man to provide for me, will he have power over me? And
That's
how
the
can
one
I,
that I'm afraid of.
right?
That's what I
Yeah.
go into, like, I'm gonna get controlled is like the
Totally. Like
yeah.
he's gonna have all of the choice and he's gonna like keep me little and small and like I'm gonna be this helpless thing. And that does happen with women in unconscious relationship dynamics. But can I be vulnerable about my fears and vulnerable about here's the things that are coming up for me? And I feel terrified that you're going to have power over me. And I feel terrified that I'm going to lose myself in the process. And like, here's my truth. And then to even express it and allow it to be seen, oftentimes allows it to like dissipate. And then I can show those parts of me that like, it is different than the story that I'm making up or the story that lives in my body or these like subconscious programs that have been running behind the scenes for generations, and that we get to create a new paradigm in love and union. And it's not what we've seen done before. It's something entirely new and entirely different. And we're creating it every moment of every day through our choices and through the way that we choose to relate to each other.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is why you're here on the show, is that topic is I feel there isn't enough example out there. And this is new. This is a newer conversation of what you're describing. And what I hear there is you being aware of the stories unconsciously that live inside of you and bring them into awareness through the relationship dynamic, noticing, oh, I have this pattern of attracting this kind of relationship. Shit, that's not what I want. And then you bringing yourself from your personal work, bringing yourself to Scott is what I hear there, and allowing him to challenge that story with the actual embodied behavior that's different than the story. And so I'd love to hear from you, Scott,
Yeah.
how you navigate inside of yourself in relationship to Taylor in those places. Like, is that before meeting Taylor, was that the level of work you've gotten to yourself where you understood the power that you do have and how that could unconsciously move through you to overpower and replay the imprinted story? Like, were you aware of that, that is a possibility? And what level of work have you done to be able to navigate inside of yourself to offer those new ingredients, to offer that the ingredient of what I hear there that feeds secure attachment of I'm not going anywhere, even though these big feelings and these vulnerable places are coming up? Like, what's your inner process there?
Yeah. Whenever I meet men who are wanting to call in their person, the thing I tell them is stop having sex. Like, cut it out. Just go, like, when you meet a woman, meet her at the level of truth, not at the level of what you want from her. And I had cut out
Yes.
sex for almost 3 years before I met Taylor. I'd committed, like I'd played that game enough times where I'd hooked up with all sorts of different women and thought it was going to bring me fulfillment. It never did. And then I would catch feelings for women that weren't actually interested in that because of the field we were playing in. So I committed to not having sex until I met the one. And it was extremely confronting for myself, for the women that I would connect with. And it brought a level of truth that was really foundational for me in terms of what I actually wanted in life, what I wanted in partnership. And that continued through when we met. And so we're talking about this masculine providership, and in the case of the two women here, the surrender into that at a really deep level. And every time Taylor has surrendered deeper into me, it has caused a death within me. I have to kill a part of myself that was not playing at that level or was not ready to provide yet, or all of these little ego games of like wanting or needing some sort of comfort or pleasure or expectation for her to show up a particular way or anything like that. So we had this expression early on in our relationship of like, she was the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, off with his head, and she just cut off the head of every little boy, like small weak king energy that was in me.
I want to say something
Yeah.
too, is that it wasn't necessarily surrendering into you, it was surrendering into God.
Fair.
Like it
Yeah.
was a surrender
It's a great point.
into the old, like divine masculine of like, it's not me giving it to him, it's
Yeah.
me giving it to life. Like I'm gonna surrender
Yeah.
to life.
Yeah.
And then I think because it was a surrender into love and to life, it allowed him to step up and step forward.
But for me, it's always been a choice. So like, so
Yeah.
even right now, where she's at in the next phase of surrender is challenging me to step up in ways that I have not had to yet. Even when, like, one of the things that was really interesting is I bought her this ring because we're engaged, and I got it for her 6 months before I actually proposed to her. And the moment I bought it, that day I bought that ring, we got in the biggest fight we've gotten in, probably in our whole relationship.
Yeah.
And then all the way up till the point of the night before I proposed, she fought me like fucking tooth and nail.
Feminine
On,
testing.
I was just asking her to wear a pretty dress the next morning and get ready at a certain time. She's like, I don't want to. I'll just wear my boots and I don't need to do my makeup for a hike. I don't want to do it. And like fighting me. And the small part of me, the weak man in me, was like, fuck this bitch. Like that's like the energy of it was like, does she not know how much I'm doing and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The strong king in me was like, no. This is an opportunity for me to step into my leadership of the relationship at a deeper level. This is she's presenting me with where she doesn't feel safe in my leadership, and energetically, even if she doesn't know what's going on tomorrow, she's not ready to say yes yet to the question that I'm about to ask. Because if she was, she would say, baby, I can't wait to put on that dress and put on my makeup and do the thing. Clearly, I did not enroll her in where I was leading her the next day strongly. And that understanding has always been the case for me. I let that lead. So if we're not connecting well sexually, where am I falling short as a man? If I'm experiencing her as naggy, what am I doing in my leadership that is actually attracting that in? And I imagine as parents, even you guys have even bigger mirrors of that, because I think all the time of like, oh, wow, this is Taylor showing up as a 6-year-old right now. Well, how I approach her right now, I imagine is very indicative of how I'm going to handle our 6-year-old when we have one.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious how this relates to parenting.
Yeah, before we shift into that, I just want to, getting chills. There's so many parallels in our journey, Scott. And the piece that I love in what you're sharing and what I feel in your share is that radical self-secure attachment,
Mhm.
where you are responsible for yourself and what's coming up in you, and able to be the observer and witness of the imprinting or the conditioning, those less evolved parts, which I call, the younger parts, those
Yeah.
little boy parts coming to the table of like, fuck this, like, fuck
Yeah.
her. Like,
Yeah.
but that's the conditioning, that's the imprinting. This is what we're being invited to take responsibility for, contain, guide. Because what I really love in your share is, yes, I really resonate to that piece of taking ownership of where am I not being the king? Where am I not guiding Courtney well?
Yeah.
That's leading to this level of reaction. And what comes up for me when you share that is that place where that's happening to the feminine part inside, where it's guiding the uncontained feminine part that feels so deeply inside, the younger parts, like a toddler inside, that this is this is unjust, this is bullshit, like, why isn't she? And then it's guiding that energy into, yeah, I hear you, feel you,
Yeah.
and we're choosing something different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which
And-
which I would say is what like me as a mom, I'm doing that all day with
Yeah.
my toddler. Like
Yeah.
that's the practice.
All day.
But what I notice is that literally I get better at that when Mike is better at embodying it. It's like a trickle down, right? So when I feel how he embodies that, then it helps me settle into that more, and then I can offer it more. That's how I experience
Oh,
it.
and that's, I'd say, the new initiation of our relationship. Like we call it the soul of our relationship. That's the third entity. There's Courtney, there's Mike, the you, me, and we.
Mhm.
And when we tune into that we space, because we have this ripe little being, just over
Yes.
2.5.
So cute, and he's so fucking alive.
So alive. Because we're constantly tuning and nurturing that field of what does offer the best potential for a secure attachment. Like, that's our forever orientation from
Potency.
day one, from being conceived.
Yes.
That was our intention.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you named it. It's a forever daily mirror
Mm-hmm.
of the young parts inside, because, and I've heard this, but now I feel it palpably in every cell of my being. Whatever phase that he's in, whatever age he's at, touches that part of me in my
Mhm.
journey and what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an opportunity to feel it want to emerge. The young
Wow.
part that's 2.5 and wasn't met in all the right ways and what I needed as an individual, as a unique soul. And then it wants to spill out.
Mm-hmm.
It wants to spill out. And so this journey is, okay, here's this part that wants to spill out. I need to resource myself, get to know that part in me, really get to know that part of my story, and resolve it, bringing it to other nervous systems. And just like Courtney shared, is I feel that because we're both doing that work, we get to lean into each other's resource of that.
Mm-hmm.
Courtney, God, talk about the ultimate teacher for me as a masculine, to get to know what the healthy role of mother would look like.
Wow.
Aw.
And what I've found, I don't know if I've directly said this, but just in this moment, I'm feeling the deepest level of appreciation for where you do embody that, and where you are so devoted to show up in that role of mother, that when she does do it, I get to feel the essence of what she's meeting our son with. And then I get to feel that, and then allow that to wake up inside of me so that I can meet that younger part of me with it.
Wow.
And then it's this beautiful dance back and forth where her evolution there gets to support my inner healing. And then sometimes, in little pockets, because we have a toddler, he's the priority. And in really unique, special moments, I get to feel that part in me and ask to be held in that way,
Mm-hmm.
where I get to feel, whoa, there's this tender young part. Can I put my head on your lap and just cry?
Mm.
And then having that experience totally rewrites the story, where the feminine is also, because I feel there's the two-sided story there. There's where the feminine wasn't safe to be supported by and protected by the masculine. And I'd say the masculine side is it hasn't been safe to expose the more tender, vulnerable parts, the little boy parts, in fear of that being used as ammunition to hurt, to harm, to shame, criticize. And so it's like, wow, what a gift that you've given to bring in the part that's compassionate and tender so that it can reveal that. And then we get to spill that into our son.
Yeah. Well, and just to bring in another layer, because I want to circle this back to business, is what I have found. And this is why I love being an entrepreneur so much is, and I actually don't know how we could be parenting the way we are, showing up in relationship the way we are without being entrepreneurs. And I can't remember which one of you spoke to this. And because the business can be responsive to what's needed in the family and like there's a relationalness there. And I feel like our business is another layer that actually holds our family. It's another layer that, of support that we can lean into, that can hold us, and that that we can feel into the family field and be like, okay, this is what's needed. And we can change the structure and change how it needs to be set up to meet whatever's arising as we're going. And I just feel like that's so, these layers of support and the layers of how we organize things. I feel like entrepreneurship with relationship, it's more an alive organism, that is responding to all the needs in the field, which can probably for some of you might be like, whoa, that feels really complicated. But I think what Taylor was saying about surrendering to spirit, I think if we think of it in that way, there's a bigger wisdom that's moving through all of us that's allowing it to happen in a harmonious way. And the journey of that is surrendering. And I'd love to just hear what's coming up for you both and hearing that. Yeah. You have a certain question?
I want to add to that layer is that's the piece that I love is what you just circled back to is, what you both have already touched on that initiation process. Like when we look at this entrepreneurial journey, life is inviting, like I'd say the current day entrepreneurship, like there's the old entrepreneurship, which is driving numbers in business, which still gets to be a part of current day business and entrepreneurship. But I'd say what's different now is it's this invitation to bring our unique medicine to serve other people. And what the initiation process is, this gets to mirror what's needed for the family field. But then what I find is I get to lean into, okay, so me as an entrepreneur, me serving humanity, what do I need to invoke in myself to refine my medicine to the world that does just lead to higher price points, more ideal clients, more revenue, more creative ideas of how to serve more people? Like I'd say that's that feminine part of entrepreneurship is life being like, here, this is what I'm inviting you to step up into. Will you say yes? And going back to what you said, like, will you choose? There's choice there. Curious what that brings up for you both.
What's coming up for me is it's still related to this masculine providership. And like as couples, like I'll share a really radical, vulnerable truth. I'm not sexually attracted to Taylor when she's really like strongly in her business. That's just the truth. And at the same time, there's a weak feminine part of me that's like, oh, but when she's in that, she will make money and then I can receive support from that money. Well, that's actually feminine receivership. And I've been playing with this polarity idea in a way I've never heard of it before, just over the past few days, and realizing that even in the old paradigm, when men would provide money for a woman to surrender into, she was still expected to give, but it was sexually. It was cleaning the house. And so there was still a there was like this is the masculine polarity that's been warped, that is super pervasive in society right now, is that the feminine doesn't actually provide in any way, because that's a masculine polarity. So even when women are in the survival mode of needing to put out so that they can get their security, so that they can get safety, stability, all of these things, the resources that they need, that is actually still a masculine polarity, even though it's attached to potentially a feminine type expression. And so the more I've been leaning into this, the more I've been realizing the energy poles within me have actually been reversed and totally fucked. I thought I was being in my masculine leadership really strong, and that was actually performative, because I was expecting, and I know so many men who have been expecting something in return for the giving. Well, that's not actually in the masculine polarity. I don't need anything to be given in return. I just generate and push out and penetrate the earth, and the penetration itself is actually what fills me up, not needing something to pour in to fill me internally.
Yeah.
I had no fucking clue. And I don't think really any men, like there's not a lot of men, I haven't heard a lot of men talking about this energetic. And so when Taylor surrenders deeper into her feminine polarity, actually, and I'm still getting the energy, like I'm reworking the flow of the energy right now, because I thought the masculine was actually going up like this, and it's not. That's totally feminine. It's no one. If you're not watching, I'm taking my hand and scooping from my pelvic floor up to my heart,
which is feminine receiving.
which is actually feminine receiving through the yoni up into the heart.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing I wasn't taught this. It's just a realization. The masculine is actually coming down and out and into the world.
There's actually practices that do that, just so you know, that just to
Tantric.
It's so beautiful, because there's a timing to all of this. Like, I had shared these practices with Scott a while ago, but it was like there wasn't a readiness yet. And it's so beautiful on this thing of initiation. I think about how, people talk about like divine timing, but like divine timing is literally just the moment something shifts inside of you is when things start to shift around you. And I had been in this like masculine, not knowing it consciously, but a little bit of a masculine energy of like protecting myself and still giving. And like something shifted inside of me where I'm like, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired of being in this energy. I like consciously I was saying I want to be open to receiving, but there was a part of me that was so scared of actually receiving life all the way. And within that, me actually shifting my energy to receive life again, he had this breakthrough literally within a day.
Yeah,
And
of course,
it's like, how will that manifest within business is so beautiful and so exciting, because we're in a polarity dynamic with life. We're in a polarity dynamic with our business. We're in a polarity dynamic with our partner. And when one partner is operating in maybe the opposing polarity, it's like, it can create a little bit of challenge within the dynamic. And it's like, it's not something that we have to consciously think about, but there's so much unraveling and deconditioning that we need to do in relationship to our work in the world and our businesses and the way that we make and give and receive and circulate money and the way that we work and all of it. And it's been so fascinating to like witness even my frustrations with Scott for being more feminine, so to speak, in a lot of ways, and how that's been like angering me and feeling like I can't lean into you. I can't surrender. I can't let go because you're this way of being right now. And the incongruence there had been between like, well, I want to be this, but like the beingness was still like there was still a block in the energy. And then moving from that into, oh, okay, if I take responsibility to be in my sovereignty, my feminine energy, and like really allow myself to actually trust in life, in the divine masculine again, then I'm met with that externally. And so it's this whole reflection of like, what happens within us will happen in our relationship, will manifest in the business. And so it's like, I love that you guys have this like outside in perspective. And there's also that like inside out where it's like, oh,
Mhm.
this shifts inside of me. Then I can bring this forward into my relationship, to my work with clients, to my business, to the world. And it's like they feed each other. When it shifts outside of us, then it shifts in us. And when it shifts in us, it shifts outside of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really brings up like who is it like it points to oneness so deeply
Yeah.
because it's like who shifted first? Well, we both just shifted
At the same time.
simultaneously. And
So
it's so
beautiful.
fascinating. And I don't know if you two have experienced this, but we're at the point now in our relationship where she will be thinking of a song in her head and I will start singing it. And we did not, it happens so frequently,
Like
it's
the oneness.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have business meetings where we both like agree on something without talking, and then I'll like, so I'm thinking this, and he's like, I was just thinking that. That happens all the time.
Almost daily.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I really think that we should like pivot this way. And I was like, I was just gonna message you about that.
Wow.
Actually meeting in our
Yeah.
consciousness, right?
I'd say this is that piece I was reflecting when I walked into my office last night, and Courtney's like, can I come in and do my
Yeah.
work on the floor and while you're doing your stuff on the computer? And I was like, yeah, that I can really feel where our relationship is showing up in our work even more, and vice versa, where our work is showing up in our relationship.
Mhm.
Because part of the sweetness and intimacy of being entrepreneurs and nurturing sacred relationship is they're not separate.
Mhm.
Where it gets part of our intimacy is having those moments that you described, that, you know, these, I call them these magical moments, these serendipitous moments where seriously, I'm reading this text, I was just going to say this,
Yeah.
and vice versa, or we're talking and then just as something's about to be said, it's like, oh yeah, yep, that. It's like that intimacy, that's that cohesion. And really the word I feel there is that's appropriate polarity in those moments where there's an integration of that masculine feminine energy inside both,
Mhm.
able to be in both. I'm providing this thing, I'm
Yes.
penetrating this moment with this thing, and I'm receiving what you're penetrating
Mhm.
with in this moment. Like this, ooh, I get chills there.
Yeah.
This beautiful synergy.
We're kind of we're having to get the hang of that, because I'm excited for when you do have kids, because I want to
Yeah.
jam on what you're noticing, because you want to hear a trip. This is such a trip. I thought being a mom would be so feminine, and this has been it's like I have to be, and I know like also there's a spectrum of kids and their life energy too, but like in my experience so far, motherhood is the most yang thing I have ever done. I have to be on every moment. And it's so, and like I know this threw you off. Mike's like, you're just so yang now. And I'm like, I can't, like I can't not be. I like have to be so, but it's
I'm gonna get a
weird.
toy in the face. I'm gonna get kicked in the yoni. Like I need to be structured and
But what's weird about it is you simultaneously are in so much yang, but you need the masculine, like that part you're describing, Taylor, where you're like, oh, you know, I'm going into this exhaustion. I'm glad that you guys are figuring that out now, because honestly, when you have a baby, it's like, and I think this is where couples can really get lost, is because suddenly as the feminine, like you don't have that energy to pour in unconsciously anymore. You don't. And you're like, I need you to hold this ship now. Like it's do or die. And the thing is like I feel like that was the biggest blessing ever for us, because I can feel the version of what would have happened for us. It would have been harder, I think, for us to find the sacred alignment, is what I would call it. And I would say becoming parents forced us to find that sacred alignment, because I couldn't overly pour into him anymore. He had to find his ground. If he was trying to find the ground in me, it was like, that's not going to happen.
little boy has nowhere to grab on
Yeah.
there. It is not available.
You know, I've done enough work on myself that I knew not to go into the common ones that women can go into, which is, you know, I'll just be the dad and the mom, you know, you're not helpful anyway, which is, you know, I knew not to go into those places. So then it was like, I need you to show up, man, right now in this way. And I can't give you any nurturance to help you do that. Go.
Which is the initiation process. And I just want to alter the word where you said forces you, and I'd say sacred choosing.
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
in
That's
the
right.
previous generation, for many,
Yeah.
it was the forced experience was these kids are a problem.
Yeah.
This is too much.
Oh, it's such a blessing.
Try to shut down or whatever. Whereas now there's more consciousness collectively, like the previous generations, they're not bad or wrong, but we are evolving consciously. This conversation wasn't something that was happening, 50 years ago. And so now it's this conscious choosing. Whoa, I can be initiated by life right now, or I could collapse into my imprinting and I know how this goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know how this goes. I know how I'll treat her. I know how I'll treat my son, because I am trying to transcend and alchemize my victim story of all those wounds. I know that story. And so I really love what you named there, and that sacred choosing. And I feel that that's what we continually do. And that's what I feel drawn to both of you for, is I can feel that sacred choosing time and time again. Like, I'm going to own my shit here. I'm going to learn what is my, and I love that you said this, Taylor, of how you experience Scott with lots of femininity and lots of that feminine energy, because this is really beautiful work that Robert Bly speaks to in a book called Iron John. And it's this really huge swing. When we go back to the previous generation, this toxic masculinity, if you want to call it that, feels a bit buzzy for me, but just a detached masculine, where it did express in lots of control and just really messy behaviors. And the natural organic swing that Robert Bly speaks to is the little boy is going to want to swing to the opposite end of the spectrum and just be this emasculated, over feminized masculine, because there's so much internalized shame of like, I have darkness inside of me and I don't want to hurt anyone anymore. I've done that enough. I can now actually feel the impact of me being hurt in all these ways, and how that's, oh God, I'm going to be gentle and kind all the time. I'm never going to feel anger again. And I'd say the terrain that I'm in myself, and I have been in the last, I'd say 6 years, is finding that middle. Because my imagining where we resonate, Scott, is when I look at my gene keys, I'm a fucking powerful man that has a lot of feminine inner world. Like, I have the great mother gene key is my vocation, my attractor key is the most feminine key in the
for men, even though like I'm quite feminine, and but in that way we're an interesting polarity.
And so the reason I'm sharing that is, for the men listening, for the women listening, I feel that this terrain, Taylor, Scott, the four of us, what we're exploring is, whoa, what's our authentic, organic, neutral point? And then where do we want to venture into being more masculine? Authentically, this is going to help me in my mission, regardless of how this is one that I'd say we come up across a lot. And I'd love to hear for you two, where in the healing journey of myself, there might be a moment, there might be a phase or a window where, it's not going to be as evolved. I'm going to be a little bit more firm and fierce, because this is the part where I didn't get boundary. I didn't get to have my no. And sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I'm not going to change it. Just for the time to honor. And if that means, if you, for your safety, need more space from that, and we've honored that, to check out, is this okay that I'm embodying this, to honor how much space, how much together, so that these gifts of leaning into each inner polarity. Oh, I'm going into more feminine. Oh, and that's okay. And then who do I need to be around while I go in there? Because what I found is, when we go into either in more of that masculine or into the omega, the feminine, the gold that comes from the bottom of that place is so serving to the mission, the business, the clients.
This is why having male friendships, especially when you're in a relationship, are so critically important, because really it's not Taylor's job to hold space for that. It's not your woman's job to hold space for that. It's your boy's job to hold space for both of it. The weak, feminine who just wants to be poured into and feel his feels and all this stuff. And then the strong masculine who is figuring his shit out. I was showing Taylor how I'm like experiencing is like, when I'm in my feminine, my intuition's internal. I take it all in and I feel it. And then I'm like, okay, here's my decision. When I'm in my masculine, it's this rod that's out in front of me and it's just bumping into shit. And it's like, yes, no. But as I'm relearning to experience that in a healthy, integrated way, it's a little aggressive right now. It's very assertive. It's out there and it is just not caring what it bumps into. And so
Yeah.
we are in like presently navigating the like that space of that. And the
Us too.
Yeah.
Getting the hang of it, but yes. Yep. Us too.
I resonate so deeply with the healing journey of men too. Just we have a term, we call them the Tulluminati guys, the guys that are like, because I lived in Tulum for 2 years and was on this journey of just like sound healing and ecstatic dance on the beach and like not penetrating anything and wanting, I call them spiritual fuckboys. They've healed everything so much, but they're still lost in that forever seeking sex and getting poured into. And yeah, it's this journey of stepping back out of that and going back into penetrating with purpose after we've healed. You know, I don't think we even need to stay in that for that long. I think it's just, oh, that's what that feels like. Now I can relate to my woman deeply. Now let me go be in the masculine all the way.
And I think it's so important for us to be integrated in masculine and feminine from a healthy perspective, because I think that was the problem generations ago with like our parents and grandparents, is that men were solely only in the masculine, disconnected from their feminine, and women were solely in their feminine but disembodied in their masculine. And of course we have the pendulum swing that inevitably happens internally within individuals, but then also in the collective consciousness. Like we can see how women are operating a lot more in their masculine and men can be a lot more in their feminine. There's nothing wrong and no shame in it whatsoever. And it's the individual journey of like remembering what union within feels like. Like, what does it feel like for me to know my divine masculine and also my wounded masculine and my wounded feminine and my divine feminine? Like, I want to know the full spectrum of it so that I can consciously choose what energy I want to create my life within, and what feels true to me and what feels true to you. And sometimes what feels true to you is for you to be in your little boy and to have me nurturing you and have me loving on you. And then sometimes for me it is being in my boss energy where I'm like, I have a mission, I have a vision, I'm going to create this thing, and like letting all of it be okay and letting all of it exist, and like allowing the synergy of energy to consistently be in evolution and in flux, and like, oh, this is where we're dancing right now. Beautiful. I love this. And then other times where it's like, oh yeah, no, you want to be daddy and be the one making all the decisions. That means I get to dance with your energy. And I think that it's a really interesting dynamic that we've been exploring, is like, how do we flow when we both want to be in an energy that maybe isn't in synergy necessarily? Like, how does that look? How does that work? Like, oh, if Scott's really wanting to be in his masculine and I really want to be in my masculine, how do we like dance with that? Work with that energy? Because business can be very masculine and it is a more structured, more outward energy. And that doesn't mean that we just stop doing it. It's like, how do we dance? How do we find a flow with each other where you're in this? Maybe we find space. Maybe we find a way to flow. Like it's a constant learning and exploration of our oneness, like our expression. Like it's consciousness moving through us. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's like, ooh, what feels good for me? And if that feels good for you, can I honor that in you and also see what feels good for me right now? And if that means that we're in flow, beautiful. And if that means that we're like this, also beautiful. That's also okay too. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And I think when we're so caught up in like the polarity of like, oh, you're the masculine, I'm the feminine, or I'm the masculine, you're the feminine, it can create more conflict because we're not in our natural way of being. But I think allowing for each one of us to have that like full spectrum experience of like, I know what it feels like to be in all of it. What am I choosing? Is where we find synergy with ourselves, with life, with business, with each other.
Mhm. Thanks for speaking to that, because I know what we've been having to navigate, which is another layer, is because we are building a business together.
Yeah.
Before, the way I would handle it is I would be like, well, I'll just go work on my business and I'll just be in whatever energy I want to be in. And then now we're like, shit, we have this thing we have to do together. But the gift of it, the gift has been, we're really getting better at like, oh, it makes sense for you to be in that alpha role with this piece. You know, like we're getting better at consciously, instead of our egos getting attached to the idea, like what you're saying, Taylor, of consciously, oh, the energy makes sense. Like you go into the alpha, I'll handle this piece. Oh, I'm going to go into this, like, and we're getting better, way better at and both of us not getting super attached to, and then even when our alphas meet and we're like, this is the moment where our alphas are meeting.
We're sitting there, hands on the sword.
It's like two gorillas standing off with each other, looking in the eyes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like when you look at our astrology, our relationship, we're both warriors, and
I imagine you have some world-class fights, some
Yeah.
world-class conflict.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
and world.
Conscious words.
Yeah,
A
oh,
lot
yeah.
of
Yeah.
conscious
Oh, yeah.
words.
Those younger wounded parts get a hold of the vocabulary that
Oh,
we
yeah.
adopted. Look out.
Oh my goodness. It's so
And
funny.
and the most epic repairs.
Yeah.
Most epic surrendering to that collective consciousness that's trying to penetrate through. I mean, like, and then finding that place of all the work, the tools that we practice regularly. And I'm gonna breathe, and I'm slowing this field down. None of this is true.
Mhm.
This isn't what I want. Our mantra that we lean into, that's attached to the soul of our relationship, is return to love.
Mhm.
And we lean into that often. Return to love.
Mhm.
What can I own here? Move forward with that.
And we grow. We don't
And we
keep
grow.
cycling in the same one.
And there's
We
then
get to find new
Yeah.
ones.
we get to find new ones. And this is what I really feel this is an important piece that I've, in my own truth anyways, is this is what's so cool about entrepreneurship and sacred relationship is I feel like I've landed in this place, this enlightened moment where it's never going to change that process. Like my ego has liked the idea that I'll be healed enough where I won't have to face these things anymore. But what I have found is the more healed I get, the more life wants from me.
Yes. Wow.
Like, and so that means new relationships, that means new stages, new audiences, new ways of delivering my medicine, which guess what? Gonna touch all those parts I thought were gone. And there's my, I had this huge realization when someone that was on my dream board of meeting and being in a relationship with, we're friends now. And I have had to go through a whole attachment journey of, I didn't think I had anxious attachment anymore. Oh my God, this person is bringing up all my most insecure, tender places because I do all the parts that don't feel deserving of this relationship where I've put this person on a pedestal. And then after time, I'm like, oh, they're human too. Oh, and they have their own shit too. Oh, we're actually both human. Oh, we're both just in our mission and there's resonance there. And wow, our missions align. That's why this connection's happened. And I feel that's an important piece for some, maybe for you, and great if it's true for somebody listening where they hit this place where, no, I'm good. But for me, what I've found is expanding. This relationship keeps expanding. The terrain of where we can dive into intimacy expands, and then the mission expands, which means all those tender human parts come up to be loved.
Yeah. It feels like you're just expanding your range through your healing, like you're opening more to life rather than just staying within the confines of the comfort zone and the familiarity. It's like, oh, I'm healing this part of me here. And then I get to heal that part of me in a new relationship and in another relationship and really integrate it into all of life versus just you and maybe one person. It's like with your clients, with your friends, with family, with like it just expands until it's like, yeah, there's a new part of me that I get to meet, and a new thing that maybe isn't necessarily just mine, but even for the collective. And I think that's another piece too, is our capacity is bigger to be able to hold all of those things.
Is it a new part, or is it actually just you've peeled back the layers to the truth at a deeper and deeper level of who you
Mm.
really
I think it's who we really
are?
are.
Yeah.
Like maybe is it me alone, or is it that we get to a point where we're tapping into the collective consciousness and it's like, oh, maybe this is something that isn't necessarily mine, but it's ours that we're exploring now at this point. Like
That feels
mine
so
and
true.
yours.
Yeah, and that feels like so much truth. And I feel like that's a really good bow tie for this conversation is that what I hear there is that collective piece where it's this arriving into what we call interdependence,
Yeah.
where collectively we need each other to
Yeah.
be able to transcend this human experience.
Mhm.
Like that is, and I've felt that even in this conversation. So thank you both for showing up. I get chills when I tune into our audience listening to this. Like, this is what's needed to really step into these higher levels of health is having these conversations, following where there's resonance, moving towards these people, having the, this is it. This is it.
Isolation is the highest cause of all cause mortality
Oh yeah.
out there, above
Yes.
diet, above sleep, above everything else.
Yes.
Community is the only single variable that is common across all the blue zones on the planet. It's like where we're speaking to now, collective, community, those things. That's the secret to health. That's the secret to life,
Yeah.
and that's where we're going. So I do think it's a beautiful place to like put all this, and you're creating your own little community with your family. We're creating communities with our business. Creating community together here as we come on these podcasts, and with the listeners who we're resonating with. You are our community. You out there who are hearing this, and it's reaching you. You are part of our community, and we want to connect with you.
Yes, and even the name of the podcast together, it's so beautiful. Like it's just like this communion energy. I kept having the dominance gene key come through. It's my life's work. Like the dominance of like, two alphas meeting each other, but the acidic state of it is communion. And like the flow of energy, synergy, and it's been a common thread throughout this whole conversation is synergy between one and another. And its dominance is like, I want to be at the top all on my own. And that's what our collective is moving out of into like, no, we're in it all together, all at the same time. Like we're all humaning together. We're not doing it on our own. We're in relationship with everyone. And it's like the more that we open ourselves up to life, the more everything opens up. Like life just becomes more beautiful and worth living.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for sharing your relational, like I feel this, we're sharing, right? We're sharing our nervous systems, our stories, and then we get to walk away from this conversation changed, So
of reciprocity.
yeah, thank you.
So thank you both for coming on. Thanks for bringing the soul of your relationship, your energy, your pieces around entrepreneurship, where it meets relationship. Thank you all for listening, tuning in. And in the honor of time, we're going to end it here. And so if you scroll down to the show notes, if you want to follow Taylor and Scott, there's going to be information down there, their social handles. And thank you all for being a part of this together space, the we space, this collective healing. Oh, thank you all so much. Thank you, Taylor and Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
You too. We want to thank you all for tuning in and listening, and a quick shout out to our sponsor, Mindful Meds. Their product is something that we personally use, love, and appreciate so deeply. They have such a range of medicinal mushrooms. There's microdosing with psilocybin, different variations of it. There's a line called Social Spark that was a collaboration with Kid Carson out of Vancouver. And the one that's my favorite is Happy Days. No psilocybin in there, just a lot of really incredible mushrooms. Cordyceps,
lion's mane, just really good for my nervous system. And so if you want to make an order because you are a listener, we want to give you a discount, 15% off. All you have to do is in the checkout, put in the promo code TOGETHER. It's going to give you 15% off. Enjoy. Until next time.